In the spring of 1999, Hong Kong, a city renowned for its vibrant pace of life and low crime rate, was rocked by a brutal case that became an indelible nightmare in the minds of its people. The Hello Kitty murder, as it came to be known, was not just a tale of violence but a descent into the abyss of moral decay. At the heart of the case was the agonizing death of a young woman, Fan Man-yee, whose body was discovered in a chilling scene, inside a Hello Kitty doll. To understand the full extent of this case that sent shockwaves through public consciousness, join us as we unravel the details of this horrific crime. This case would likely have gone undetected if a girl named Lau Mingfang had not gone to the police station to report the incident. On the morning of May 26, 1999, a young, frail and pale girl walked into the Tsim Sha Tsui police station. It was Lau Mingfang, her eyes red from sleeplessness and fear. She requested to speak with an investigator, insisting she had something important to confess. The officer on duty, Wang Qiming, initially thought it was a minor issue, perhaps a theft or a family dispute. But as Lau began to speak, the atmosphere in the interrogation room grew heavy. "I can't sleep," Lau said, her voice trembling. "She appears in my dreams every night. I see her crying, begging for forgiveness. I can't take it anymore." When Wang asked who she was, Lau broke down in tears and spoke of Fan Man-yee, the horrific days in the Granville apartment, and the Hello Kitty doll that held a terrifying secret. Realizing the gravity of her story, Wang immediately called for senior investigators to record her statement. Over the next 4 hours, Lau recounted every detail, from Fan's abduction to the dismemberment of her body. She described how Chan Manlok laughed while beating Fan, how Liang Wailuan and Liang Xingqiu joined in without hesitation, and how she herself, though terrified, was swept up in the frenzy. Lau's testimony was not just a confession but a plea for help, an attempt to escape the shadow of the crime she had witnessed and participated in. So, who was the victim? Fan Man-yee was a 23-year-old woman whose life was marked by hardship. Born in 1976 in Shenzhen, China, Fan was abandoned by her family as a child. She grew up in a girls' orphanage in Hong Kong's Ma Tau Wai area, which provided shelter but lacked the warmth of family. Life in the orphanage was harsh, and by regulation, when Fan turned 15, she was forced to leave. With nowhere to turn, Fan ended up on the streets, facing the dangers of a life adrift. A life on the margins led Fan to quickly succumb to temptation. She began engaging in petty theft and eventually turned to prostitution to survive. During her teenage years, Fan became addicted to drugs, particularly methamphetamine, which gradually became an inseparable part of her life. Despite this, Fan still yearned for moments of normalcy. In 1996, while working as a dancer at the Empress Karaoke nightclub, she met Wu Zhiyuan, a fellow drug addict and one of her clients. Their turbulent, codependent relationship led to marriage. In 1998, Fan gave birth to a son, bringing a glimmer of hope amidst her chaotic life. However, neighbors at their Kwai Chung apartment frequently heard the sounds of domestic violence, revealing a relationship steeped in pain. In 1997, while working at Romance Villa, a brothel in Kowloon, Fan met Chan Manlok, who would later become her tragic fate. Chan, a member of the Wishing Triad and a pimp, was a regular client of Fan's. Their relationship was purely transactional, rooted in the underworld of Hong Kong's nightlife entertainment industry. In early 1999, a desperate act set off a chain of tragedy. Fan stole a wallet containing approximately 4,000 Hong Kong dollars from Chan. When caught, she quickly returned the money, but Chan demanded an additional 10,000 Hong Kong dollars as compensation, a sum Fan couldn't immediately pay. This debt, combined with Chan's vindictive nature, triggered a sequence of events leading to one of the most brutal cases in Hong Kong's history. The Hello Kitty murder was carried out by a group of 4 individuals, each playing a role in the abduction, torture, and murder of Fan Man-yee. The perpetrators included Chan Manlok, Liang Wailuan, Liang Xingqiu, and Lau Mingfang, a 14-year-old girl known by the nickname Ah Fang. Their backgrounds and motives shed light on the complexity of this criminal group. First, there was Chan Manlok. At 34, Chan was the ringleader, a notorious figure in Hong Kong's underworld. A member of the Wishing Triad, he operated as a drug dealer and pimp, using fear and manipulation to consolidate his power. Described as charismatic yet ruthless, Chan had a history of exploiting vulnerable individuals, particularly young women. He lived a double life, on one hand maintaining a family facade with his wife, Tsai Puiling, and their newborn child at the Shek Lei estate. On the other, he was deeply entrenched in the criminal world. His encounter with Fan Man-yee was not just a client-prostitute relationship. It was an opportunity for Chan to assert dominance after she stole his wallet. Initially, Chan planned to force Fan into prostitution to repay her debt, but his controlling tendencies and brutal personality caused the situation to escalate far beyond financial motives. Later psychological evaluations described Chan as remorseless, a person with a completely degraded moral compass. The second was Leung Wailuan. At 21, known as Gangsta 1, Leung Wailuan was a young follower of Chan working at a retail shop near Granville Road. He was drawn into the gang lifestyle, tempted by money and power. Less experienced than Chan, Leung Wailuan was impressionable, eager to prove himself within the group. He actively participated in torturing Fan, though much of his actions stemmed from following Chan's orders. His later attempt to flee to mainland China suggests he was aware of the severity of the crime. The third perpetrator was Leung Xingqiu. Possibly around 26 years old and known as Gangsta 2, Leung Xingqiu was another of Chan's lackeys. Also working at a retail shop, he was drawn into the triad's web. Leung Xingqiu was romantically involved with Lau Mingfeng, which made his participation more personal. Described as hot-tempered, he actively took part in Fan's abuse, driven by loyalty to Chan and a desire to assert dominance. Years later, in 2022, Leung Xingqiu was convicted of sexual assault, indicating a prolonged pattern of predatory behavior following the case. The final and perhaps most complex figure was Lau Mingfeng, a 14-year-old girl known as Ah Fang. Described as Chan's girlfriend, Lau was likely a victim of grooming and manipulation into the gang's world. At such a young age, she was both a perpetrator and a witness, participating in the torture while enduring severe psychological trauma. Her confession to the police, spurred by nightmares and a belief that Fan's ghost was haunting her, was the turning point that cracked the case. Lau's testimony, given in exchange for immunity from prosecution, painted a vivid picture of the horrors that unfolded in the Granville Road apartment. On March 17, 1999, Fan Man-yee was abducted from her apartment in Fuyu, Liu Estate. The perpetrators Chan Man-lok, Leung Wailuan, Leung Xingqiu, and Lau Mingfeng worked together with chilling coordination. They took Fan to an apartment at 31 Granville Road, Simsha Sui, rented by Chan but owned by two unrelated individuals, Ah Sam and Ah Kao. This apartment, nestled in a bustling shopping district, became the site of an unimaginable month of torture. The Granville Road apartment was an ordinary space, filled with Hello Kitty items, curtains, cutlery, stuffed toys, that later gave the case its chilling name. Initially, Chan intended to force Fan into prostitution to repay her debt, but the plan quickly morphed into a display of brutality and control. For roughly a month, Fan Man-yee endured relentless torture. Bound with electrical cords, she was stripped of all freedom and dignity. The perpetrators used various methods to inflict pain. Fan was beaten with iron bars, pipes, and fists. Chan was particularly vicious, with Lau later testifying that he kicked Fan's head approximately 50 times during one session. The group treated Fan like a punching bag, at times hanging her by her feet from a ceiling hook to prolong her suffering. They melted plastic straws onto Fan's legs, causing blistering burns, then used direct flames to sear her already wounded skin. Chili oil was poured into her blisters and eyes, intensifying her agony. Candle wax and hot resin were also used to burn her legs. In a particularly revolting act, Fan was forced to eat human feces. The perpetrators demanded she smile while enduring this, threatening worse abuse if she didn't comply. Fan was raped multiple times, primarily by Chan, though others participated to varying degrees. This was both a tool of control and an expression of depravity. Throughout her captivity, Fan slipped in and out of consciousness, her body pushed to the limits of endurance. The apartment, adorned with cheerful Hello Kitty items, stood in horrifying contrast to the atrocities unfolding inside. Between April 14th and 15th, 1999, Fan Man-yee died from her severe injuries. The exact cause of death remains uncertain, as her body was too decomposed for a definitive determination. Some sources suggest she died from traumatic shock, while others speculate that an overdose of drugs, possibly methamphetamine, contributed to her death. After Fan's death, the perpetrators faced a new problem: what to do with her body. Chan Man-lok, with chilling coldness, decided to dismember it to conceal the crime. Fan's body was cut into pieces, with parts stuffed into garbage bags and discarded. Her head was boiled in a large pot to remove soft tissue, and her skull was ultimately hidden inside a Hello Kitty doll, with real hair sewn on to disguise it. This act was not only meant to erase evidence but also demonstrated utter contempt for Fan's life. The case began to unravel on May 26, 1999, when Lau Mingfang, tormented by horrific nightmares, decided to walk into a police station and confess everything. She recounted how she repeatedly dreamed of Fan Man-yee, believing the victim's ghost was haunting her, making it impossible to bear the weight of her guilt. Lau's testimony was the key that unlocked the case, providing police with gruesome details of what transpired in the Granville Road apartment. Lau provided a detailed account of Fan's abduction, the relentless days of torture, and ultimately her death. She testified that after Fan died, Chan Man-lok directed the group to dismember the body to dispose of it. Fan's head was boiled in a large pot, other body parts were chopped up and placed in garbage bags, and her skull was stuffed inside the Hello Kitty doll. Lau led the police to the apartment, where they began examining the scene and found evidence corroborating her testimony. The Hong Kong police, led by seasoned inspectors from the Tsim Sha Tsui police station, immediately launched a comprehensive investigation. The investigation team, supported by forensic experts, arrived at the apartment at 31 Granville Road on May 27, 1999. What they uncovered left even the most experienced investigators shaken. The apartment was cluttered, filled with trash and Hello Kitty-themed items, curtains, dishes, stuffed toys. In one corner, the police found the infamous Hello Kitty doll, containing Fan's skull, sewn shut with real hair attached. Garbage bags holding bones and body fragments were discovered in nearby bins, revealing the perpetrator's attempt to dispose of the evidence. The police seized electrical cords used to bind Fan, iron bars and pipes used to beat her, and a large pot in the kitchen that still bore traces of human tissue. These items matched Lau's description of how the body was handled. Neighbors had reported a foul odor emanating from the apartment for weeks prior, but no one suspected it was linked to such a horrific crime. The smell was later identified as coming from the decomposition and boiling of the body. Forensic experts were called in to analyze the collected samples. Their work was challenging due to the severe decomposition of Fan's body. However, they reached several key conclusions. Fan's bones showed multiple fractures, particularly in her ribs and femurs, confirming she had been brutally beaten over an extended period. Burn marks on her skin, though partially decomposed, indicated the use of fire and hot resin. Traces of chili oil and other chemicals were found in the remaining tissue samples. Due to the extent of decomposition, determining the exact cause of death was impossible. One theory suggested Fan died from traumatic shock due to continuous torture, while some tissue samples showed traces of methamphetamine, leading to speculation that an overdose may have contributed to her death. However, there was insufficient evidence to confirm this. Despite the dismemberment, features such as hair and other identifying marks allowed the police to confirm the remains belonged to Fan Man-yee, who had been reported missing by her husband, Wu Zhiyuan, a few weeks earlier. In addition to Lau Mingfang's detailed testimony, the police interviewed other witnesses to build a comprehensive picture of the case. Neighbors, those living near the Granville Road apartment, reported frequently hearing noises, screams, sounds of heavy objects falling at night. Some recalled seeing Chan and his accomplices coming and going, but no one suspected anything more serious than a typical argument. Fan's colleagues, women working at Romance Villa, confirmed that Fan had a client relationship with Chan Man-lok and had mentioned stealing his wallet. Some noted that Fan seemed frightened afterward, worried that Chan would seek revenge. Wu Zhiyuan, Fan's husband, reported her missing since mid-March 1999. He filed a police report weeks later, but due to their chaotic lifestyle, it was initially given low priority. Wu also confirmed that Fan was a drug addict and often had trouble with gangs. Based on Lau Mingfang's testimony, the police swiftly issued arrest warrants for Chan Man-lok, Liang Wailuan and Liang Xingqiu. Chan Man-lok, he was arrested at his apartment in Shek Lei Estate on May 28, 1999. Upon arrest, Chan remained calm, denying all allegations and claiming Lau had fabricated the story for personal revenge. However, the presence of items linked to the Granville apartment in his home undermined his defense. Liang Wailuan, he was apprehended at his workplace, a retail shop near Granville Road. Initially, Liang Wailuan tried to deny involvement, but when confronted with evidence in Lau's testimony, he began blaming Chan, insisting he only followed orders. Liang Xingqiu, he was caught attempting to flee to mainland China via the Shenzhen border. His flight indicated a clear awareness of the crime and its consequences. During interrogations, he tried to downplay his role, but Lau's testimony exposed his active participation. Lau Mingfang, due to her role as the key witness and her young age, was granted immunity from prosecution in exchange for her full testimony. This decision sparked public controversy, with some arguing she should also be held accountable for participating in Fan's torture. However, the police and prosecutors maintained that Lau's testimony was critical to bringing the main perpetrators to justice, and immunity was necessary to ensure justice for Fan. In the weeks that followed, the investigation team worked tirelessly to strengthen the case. They compiled physical evidence, witness statements, and forensic reports to ensure the case was robust enough for trial. News of the case spread rapidly, shocking Hong Kong's public. The media dubbed it the Hello Kitty murder, due to the detail of the doll containing the skull. Public pressure pushed the police to act swiftly but carefully to avoid mistakes. The trial of Chan Man-lok, Leung Wai-luen, and Leung Shing-cho began in October 2000 at the Hong Kong High Court. The case drew immense attention from the public and media, with reporters lining up outside the courtroom to cover every development. The prosecution, led by a team of experienced lawyers, presented a clear case built on three pillars: physical evidence, Lau Mingfang's testimony, and forensic reports. The prosecution described a calculated and brutal series of actions, emphasizing Chan's leadership role and the active participation of the other two. They argued that, while it couldn't be proven the death was intentional murder, the extent of the torture demonstrated an intent to cause serious harm, sufficient for a manslaughter conviction. Chan's defense lawyer argued that Fan's death was due to a drug overdose, not torture, and that Chan had no intent to kill her. Leung Wai-luen and Leung Shing-cho claimed they were only following orders, attempting to minimize their responsibility. The trial was a tense, shocking event, gripping the city. The courtroom was packed, with reporters scribbling every word while Fan's sparse family and friends sat quietly in the back rows. Chan, with a cold demeanor, showed little reaction as the prosecution presented evidence against him. Leung Wai-luen appeared nervous, constantly scanning the room, while Leung Shing-cho kept his head bowed for much of the time. One of the most memorable moments was when Lau Mingfang took the stand. She entered the courtroom, small and trembling, under the scrutiny of the jury and public. The prosecutor, Emily Chan, guided Lau through every detail of the case, asking her to describe what happened in the Granville apartment. Lau's voice frequently broke with sobs, but she pressed on, recounting how Fan begged for mercy, how Chan laughed while pouring chili oil into her eyes, and the moment she realized Fan had died. Given the severity of the case and the reliance on Lau Mingfang's testimony as primary evidence, the trial stretched over 2 months. After nearly 2 months of proceedings, the jury, comprising 9 Hong Kong citizens, deliberated for 3 days before delivering their verdict on December 8, 2000. All 3 defendants, Chan Man-lok, Leung Wai-luen, and Leung Shing-cho, were found guilty on the following charges: manslaughter. The jury concluded that, while there was no clear evidence of intent to kill, the defendants' acts of torture directly caused Fan's death. Unlawful imprisonment. The abduction and detention of Fan for over a month was deemed a serious criminal act. Preventing lawful burial. Dismembering and disposing of the body was considered a separate offense, reflecting disrespect for the deceased. All 3 defendants were sentenced to life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after 20 years, depending on their behavior in prison. Lau Mingfang was not prosecuted but was required to participate in psychological counseling programs to address the trauma from the case. The decision to grant her immunity remained controversial, with some arguing she should have faced accountability, while others contended that her youth and manipulated state were mitigating factors. Fan Man-yee's death left an unfillable void for those who cared for her, despite her already challenging life. Wu Zhiyuan, Fan's husband, fell into despair after the case. He struggled to care for their son, a child now forced to grow up without a mother. Fan's family, who had abandoned her as a child, did not appear during the investigation or trial, raising questions about the isolation she endured throughout her life. The Hello Kitty murder transcended the boundaries of a mere crime story to become part of Hong Kong's popular culture. It was referenced in books, documentaries, and articles, often cited as a cautionary tale about society's darker undercurrents. The Hello Kitty doll, once a symbol of innocence and cuteness, took on a grim connotation in the city's collective memory. Some Hong Kong stores even reported a drop in Hello Kitty merchandise sales after the case, as consumers began associating the image with the horrific crime. The Hello Kitty murder is not just a story of a crime but a mirror reflecting society's failures to protect the vulnerable. It raises questions about the responsibility of communities, legal systems, and social institutions in preventing such tragedies. While the perpetrators were brought to justice, Fan Man-yee's story remains a reminder that true justice lies not only in punishment but in building a society where no one is left behind. Thank you, dear audience, for joining us on this emotional journey to uncover the truth. We look forward to meeting you again in the upcoming cases, where we will continue to bring insightful and honest perspectives about the world around us. Goodbye and see you soon.